Well, as we come into worship, we come into a time of exhortation as we get ready to approach Him, dealing with our sins. But our exhortation today is from the book of Mark. If you've been participating with us in the same page summer reading plan, then that means on Monday you finish the book of Mark. And so here we go, an exhortation from the book of Mark. Now, if you were to take the whole book of Mark in one sitting, what exhortation could you make of it? Well, the clearest thing to say about the book of Mark is that bold statement that starts it in its very first line, chapter 1, verse 1, where we read, "The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." That phrase, the Son of God, means Jesus is God. Jews would have first of all understood it that way, for as we read in another place, "Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him because he said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God." So right at the beginning, first line, in fact, Mark calls Jesus the Son of God, putting the stamp of disapproval right at the front. Later, when he is baptized, the Father says the same thing. Pulling the heavens apart, he says, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Mark 1:11. God repeats that statement in Mark at the Mount of Transfiguration. "And a cloud came and overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, 'This is my beloved Son, hear him.'" Mark 9:7. Demons even corroborate this. Whenever they saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, saying, "You are the Son of God." Mark 3:11. And again, demons repeat it in Mark 5:7. "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Finally, no human actually says that in the Gospel of Mark until the very end, when a human, the first one, and a Gentile, in fact, finally says the same thing. Mark 15:39. "So when the centurion who stood opposite him saw that he cried out like this and breathed his last, he said, 'Truly, this man was the Son of God.'" History reports that John Mark was the one who penned this gospel, and that John Mark relied heavily on the Apostle Peter to write it. Papias, Clement of Alexandria, and Irenaeus, three different places of the Roman Empire, all who were born before Jesus died, before Peter died, there it is, report the same thing. And it is interesting that Peter seems to show special love for Mark. Peter ends his own epistle with this line, "She who is in Babylon, elect together with you, greets you, and so does Mark, my son." 1 Peter 5:13. And it is this Peter, by the way, the Apostle Peter, who gives us an exhortation, in fact, our exhortation this morning, on the importance of hearing that phrase, the Son of God. When he writes this is from 2 Peter. "We were," speaking of the apostles, "we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. For he received from God the Father honor and glory when such a voice came to him from the excellent glory. 'This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased.' And we heard this voice, which came from heaven when we were with him on the holy mountain." That's the Mount of Transfiguration. "And so we have the prophetic word confirmed, which you do well to heed, as a light that shines in dark places until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts." That's the exhortation this morning from Mark. Peter gives it in this phrase so central to Mark: Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That name, that truth, is a light in the dark place. It causes the day to dawn in our hearts. And Peter and God's exhortation about the phrase is this: you do well to heed it. And that is nearly the same exact thing the Father said to Peter when he was on the Mount of Transfiguration. "This is my Son, hear him." And this reminds us of our need to confess.